After spending 27 years on death row, Charles Victor Thompson was finally executed on January 28, 2026, at 6 p.m. at the Huntsville unit in Texas by lethal injection. Stay until the end, because in this video, I will tell you about the crime that sent him to death row, his historic prison escape, the details of his execution, and his final words before dying. In 1997, Charles Victor Thompson, then 27 years old and already involved in the world of crime and drugs, met Glenda Dennise Hayslip, 39, in the nightlife scene of bars in Houston, Texas. Dennise worked as a nail technician and was the mother of a teenage boy named Wade Hayslip, who was 13 years old at the time. His parents had divorced approximately 1 year before Thompson entered their lives. At first, Charles formed a friendship with Dennise, which gradually turned into a romantic relationship. Thompson claimed that he would take care of both her and her son. However, over time, the relationship became toxic and destructive, marked by control, jealousy, and physical violence. Thompson was an alcoholic and addicted to drugs, especially cocaine, which worsened his increasingly possessive and aggressive behavior toward Dennise. During the relationship, Thompson assaulted Dennise on multiple occasions. She arrived at work several times with visible bruises on her face. Thompson himself admitted to slapping her, causing a black eye and a cut lip in a single incident prior to the murders, although he claimed it was the first time he had ever hit a woman. After approximately 1 year together, Dennise decided to end the relationship permanently due to Thompson's constant violence and control. It was then that she met Darren Keith Cain, a 30-year-old bartender who worked at the same bar where she and Thompson had first met, and which they both used to frequent. Dennise and Darren began as friends, and over time started a romantic relationship. According to those who knew him, Cain was described as loyal, calm, and protective, a complete contrast to the life Dennise had previously experienced. Thompson did not accept the separation. He continued stalking Dennise, calling her constantly and showing up uninvited at her apartment, located in the Waterman Crossing complex. There, he would confront her, repeatedly demanding answers about her relationship with Darren and threatening to harm her if she did not return to him. On the night of Wednesday, April 29, 1998, something happened that would change the course of the story. At around 2:30 a.m., Darren Cain was asleep when he received a phone call from Dennise. Through tears, she begged for help. Thompson was inside her apartment, beating her and threatening her. When Cain arrived at Dennise's apartment on Wunderlich Drive, he came face to face with Thompson. Dennise was terrified and crying, which caused a violent physical fight to break out between the two men, lasting approximately 15 minutes. Eventually, Cain managed to overpower Thompson. Defeated, Charles began begging not to be hit anymore. He apologized and adopted a completely different attitude, claiming that he would accept Dennise's decision to be with Darren and not with him. In response to this apparent surrender, Darren compassionately extended his hand. The three of them sat outside the apartment and began talking while sharing a beer. At around 3 a.m., a Harris County Sheriff's deputy responded to a domestic disturbance call. Upon arrival, he found Thompson and Cain sitting in front of Dennise's apartment, appearing calm and reconciled. What authorities did not know was that Thompson had never accepted the situation. It was all a facade. Deep down, he remained furious, humiliated by the fight, and consumed by jealousy. After the officer escorted Charles out of the apartment complex, Thompson did not go home. Instead, he drove to his residence, retrieved a firearm, a semi-automatic pistol, and returned to Dennise Hayslip's apartment approximately 3 hours later, in the early morning hours of April 30th, 1998. It was around 6 a.m. when Thompson returned. Dennise and Darren likely believed the danger had passed and that they could finally rest after the night's confrontation. Thompson approached the apartment's front door and, without hesitation, kicked it in with force, shattering the lock and forcing his way inside. The sound of the door breaking should have immediately alerted Dennise and Darren that something terrible was about to happen. Darren Keith, who was in the living room, stood up when he heard the crash. At that moment, Thompson burst into the apartment with a gun in his hand, aiming directly at him. Without saying a single word or giving him any chance to react, Thompson fired at Darren Keith 4 times. The bullet struck his neck and chest, causing extremely severe injuries. 2 shots passed through his chest, and when Keith tried to flee, Thompson shot him once in the back. Darren collapsed to the floor, badly wounded and agonizing. Even so, in a desperate act of survival and protection for Dennise, Keith managed to grab Thompson's foot, trying to prevent him from going after her, as Dennise had just come out of the bedroom and was heading toward the kitchen. With Darren's body lying on the floor, Thompson broke free. He then placed the gun against the back of his head at the base of the neck and fired one final shot at point-blank range. Darren Keith Cain died instantly at the scene. While Darren's murder was taking place, Dennise ran from one of the bedrooms toward the kitchen, trying to grab a knife to defend herself. She had a scrape-like injury on her leg, and investigators later found a bullet lodged in the baseboard of the pantry, suggesting that Thompson fired as she was fleeing. However, Thompson managed to catch up with her and restrain her. During the attack, he reloaded his weapon. Forensic evidence showed that the gun had to be deliberately reloaded, indicating premeditation and a conscious pause before continuing the violence. Thompson pressed the barrel of the gun against Dennise's right cheek and said, "I can shoot you too, bitch." He then pulled the trigger. The bullet entered through her right cheek, causing devastating internal damage. The impact destroyed her teeth and severely injured her tongue, resulting in massive bleeding. Despite the severity of her wounds, Dennise Hayslip survived the initial attack. She remained conscious, though in critical condition, when a neighbor identified in court records as Coker arrived at the scene and called for help. Coker had heard the gunshots and immediately ran to Dennise's apartment. When he arrived, he found her sitting in a pool of blood, with a bullet hole in her right cheek and a large amount of blood coming from her mouth. Charles Thompson was also present at the scene. Coker asked Dennise if Thompson had shot her, and she nodded her head, confirming it. Shortly afterward, Thompson fled the area. He drove to the nearby Cypress Creek area, where he threw the murder weapon into the water in an attempt to dispose of the evidence. However, his behavior afterward was unusual. He did not attempt to evade justice. Instead of running, he drove directly to the home of an acquaintance and confidant, to whom he confessed in detail everything he had just done. After that confession, Thompson contacted his father, who later helped facilitate his surrender to authorities that same morning. Thompson ultimately turned himself in at a police station alongside his father, stating, in his own words, that he wanted to make himself available for questioning. While Thompson was confessing his crime, Dennise Hayslip was fighting for her life. Emergency services were alerted immediately, and Dennise was airlifted by helicopter to Herman Hospital in Houston for urgent medical treatment. Despite the efforts of medical staff, Dennise fell into a coma due to severe bradycardia, a dangerous drop in heart rate that caused irreversible brain damage from lack of oxygen. Dennise Hayslip remained hospitalized for a full week, connected to life support. During those days, her family faced the devastating decision of whether to withdraw medical assistance. On May 6, 1998, exactly 1 week after the shooting, Glenda Dennise Hayslip died as a result of complications from the gunshot wound and the medical treatment that followed. She was 39 years old at the time of her death. Wade Hayslip, only 13 years old, was at school when he received the devastating news. A classmate approached him and said, "There was a shooting. 1 person died. Your mom was shot." Wade knew immediately. He had already warned his mother about Thompson. He had witnessed the abuse. And now his worst fears had come true. "There is definitely a part of me that is still in 1998. Wade Hayslip said in an interview 1 week later, describing how the trauma of that morning has followed him for decades. Thompson was arrested on April 30th, 1998, the same day as the shootings. A Harris County Sheriff's deputy testified that the murder weapon was eventually recovered from Cypress Creek, with the help of an informant, likely based on information Thompson himself provided during his confession. Charles Victor Thompson went on trial in Harris County in 1999, charged with capital murder. He was 28 years old at the time of the court proceedings. From the beginning, the state of Texas announced it would seek the death penalty. In July 1998, while Thompson remained in jail awaiting trial, he was reported by a fellow inmate named Jack Reed, who shared a cell with him. Reed told police that Thompson was attempting to arrange the murder of Diane Zernia, a woman listed as a key witness in his capital murder case. After receiving the tip, authorities organized an undercover operation. They sent an agent identified as Gary Johnson, equipped with recording devices, who posed as a hired hitman. During a secretly recorded meeting on July 7, 1998, Thompson told Johnson directly that there was a witness in his case who needed to be eliminated, confirming his attempt to obstruct justice.
State's witness is the only witness they got. That's kind of more important.
So it's more important to kill her than get the gun back. If I go ahead and take her out, and you get out, is there a chance you could tie me up then?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, what are we talking about? How much?
Name your price.
Well, if you got the address, okay, I'll kill her for $1,500.
On April 14, 1999, after hearing all the evidence and testimony, the jury found Charles Victor Thompson guilty of capital murder and sentenced him to death. After receiving his second death sentence, Charles Victor Thompson remained housed in the Harris County Jail while awaiting transfer to death row at the Polunsky Unit in Livingston, Texas. What happened next would become one of the most shocking prison escapes ever carried out by a death row inmate in the state. On November 3, 2005, Thompson put his plan into action. Using a fake ID, civilian clothes hidden in his cell, and taking advantage of staff negligence, he managed to remove his handcuffs, change out of his jail uniform, and walk out of the visitation area as if he were an employee of the court system. Completely calm, he passed by several guards without a single one verifying his identity and eventually exited the jail through the main entrance, becoming a free man in broad daylight. The escape immediately sparked panic among jurors from the case and the victims' families. The U.S. Marshals offered a $10,000 reward and distributed his photo nationwide. For 3 days, Thompson remained on the run. He traveled nearly 200 miles from Houston to Shreveport, Louisiana, though it was never definitively determined how he managed to cover that distance. During that time, he attempted to obtain money from overseas and even posed as a victim of Hurricane Katrina to avoid raising suspicion. His freedom ended on November 6, 2005, when authorities located him outside a liquor store in Shreveport. Thompson was arrested without resistance, visibly intoxicated, and admitted his identity when confronted by agents. After his recapture, Thompson was finally transferred to the Allen B. Polunsky Unit in Livingston, Texas, where he spent nearly 20 years on death row. On September 11, 2025, Charles Victor Thompson officially received his execution warrant, setting his death by lethal injection for January 28, 2026, at the Huntsville Unit in Texas. Finally, on January 28, 2026, 55-year-old Charles Victor Thompson was executed by lethal injection. That morning, at around 6:30 a.m., Thompson was awakened by prison staff. During his final hours, he spent time reading, speaking with his attorneys, and meeting with his spiritual advisor. For his last meal, he ate the regular prison menu, as the state of Texas does not offer a special last meal. He did not receive visits from any family members. At approximately 6 p.m., Thompson was escorted to the execution chamber. He was placed on a padded gurney and secured with straps. Through an opening in the wall, 3 intravenous lines were connected to his body, prepared to administer the lethal injection. When asked if he wished to make any final statement, Thompson appeared to whisper something, but his words were not audible to the witnesses. The execution was carried out by lethal injection, but unlike other cases, it did not proceed entirely without incident. According to witnesses present, Thompson showed slight signs of discomfort and suffering, making small bodily movements and irregular breaths during the first minutes of the procedure, before ultimately losing consciousness. At 6:15 p.m., authorities officially confirmed his death.